And welcome to the Monday Steelers Depot live stream. Thank you guys for being here. As always, I am Alex Kazora. Joining me is Dave Bryan, here to answer your Steelers questions for the next hour until 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Just give me 1 second to set up the stream on my end, and then we'll bring up the site as well, so you guys can read the top headlines of the day. While I do that, Dave, how you doing?
I am doing well. A beautiful day here in Las Vegas, but it's not going to last. Supposed to have winds like 70 miles an
Ooh.
hour, up to maybe even 80 or 90, they said, in some parts of the valley on Tuesday and Wednesday. So other than that, everything's going fantastic.
Yeah, other than horrible winds, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
out there. Does it usually get like that?
About 3 times a year you'll have super heavy windy days. I don't think any rain's in the forecast. I just think just strong winds coming
Hmm.
into the valley.
All right, well, keep your feet on the ground. As always, Dave and I here to answer your Steelers questions for the next hour. You guys can send us a super chat to move to the front of the line and have your question be guaranteed to be asked and answered. No obligation to do so. We appreciate that. If you can't send a super chat, if you guys could just hit the like button, that would really mean a lot to Dave and I. It's a big help for the YouTube algorithm to bring more people into the chat, into the stream, and just to the channel in general. So with that out of the way, I assume the audio is good. If you guys could not hear Dave a moment ago, please let me know in the chat, but everything has been good as of late, and so we'll trust that and get to your questions. First question comes from Zachary Prosba, who says, Tomlin takes you to a pro day dinner as a player at Pitt. Where are you going and what do you order, knowing the bill is picked up by Mike Tomlin and crew? That's a good question. This was weirdly a big topic of discussion last year on the Mike Tomlin quarterback pro day dinner tour. I think there were chicken wings and forget what else there were at the time. But I don't know. What is your dinner of choice with Mike Tomlin, Dave?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know much. I mean, I know very limited about places to eat in Pittsburgh or
What's
whatnot.
just like
But
cuisine? What's the Italian pizza, burgers? What are you getting just generally?
I like it. I'll never turn down a really good burger or let's see, steak. I mean, chicken. I mean, something along those lines, I guess.
All right, and yeah, for me, I don't know about one particular place, but maybe I would just go very cliche Permanis and just to see what Mike Tomlin's Permanis order would be. I just would want to know what he would get, so that'd be my choice.
Do you get the coleslaw on that or no?
I do. I want to give you guys a real hot take that's gonna probably
I
upset
don't
most
like
of the chat.
coleslaw,
No,
so when I ate there, I didn't have coleslaw, and probably
ooh,
about got thrown out of the
yeah,
place. This was years ago too. So
that is a sin. But I was gonna say I like coleslaw. I think Permanis though a little overrated. I don't think it's that great Pittsburgh cuisine. I think it's a little over the top talked about. I know people are gonna hate me for that, but that's my hot take.
well, I don't eat coleslaw. Hate cabbage. I just
Yeah.
they can leave all that off.
Audio sound good, guys? Just let me know in the chat. I just want to test the audio in the chat. Make sure everything is working okay. But if you could just drop that in the comments, would appreciate that. We'll move on now to Matt Bell, who says, are there any draft prospects you think will be busts or players the Steelers should avoid drafting? No, this is late, but Dave did an amazing job on the Salary Cap Solo podcast, so thank you for that, Matt. I don't know if there's one guy yet where I've felt like really underwhelmed by watching. I'm a little mixed on Zay Flowers. I do like his game a lot. Do I like it in that first round tier, though? I don't think he's as good as the first round picks of the past and kind of pushed up by a weaker top end of the receiver class overall. What are your thoughts, Dave?
Yeah, I'm not to the point. I'm still scratching the surface on a lot of these guys to get caught up, and it'll be probably until the combine comes and goes before I really have I'm at that point where I can talk a little bit better about top 15 at each position, 20 at each position along those lines at this point. So I mean, I'm not ready to say, man, there's one guy that I'm scared might be overrated. I'll tell you this, the Brissy kid right now,
Mm,
just from a sheer fact of everybody says, "Oh, this guy's guaranteed to go top 10 or something along those lines." Top 15. There's no way he would be on the board. In the tape that I've watched, I haven't seen that quite yet. Now, do I think he could still very much be in play for the Steelers at, let's say, either 17 overall or the 32nd overall? Absolutely, I do. But I'm at the point now where all these early hot takes come in on these guys and all like that, and not that I don't think he's overrated or anything. It's just that I'm having problems trying to find where a lot of people think that this kid won't be on the board at 17 overall.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, and I think that's probably a really good name to talk about there, because I think even, was it Daniel Jeremiah that you referenced as kind of calling him one of the more polarizing players, prospects in this draft?
Yeah, I think verbatim he said teams are split on him,
Okay.
and you and I talked about it during a recent podcast as well too. I think the issue, because him missing games, obviously coming off that knee injury the season prior. He missed games last year to, what was it, a kidney infection, and obviously the passing of his younger sister and all like that. I haven't gotten to a point where I've been able to go back and watch, let's say, his 2020 tape yet. But I think that's probably where he's probably going to pop off the tape more than anything, is that season there. And obviously, most of his 2021 season was wrecked by the knee injury, and then 2022 missed some games there and all like that. So look, from a character, he's going to check.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to check almost every box for the Steelers when it comes to the Alex Kozora, what the Steelers look for category there. I mean, he's got hearts and smarts, and the only question is what will the final tape say on him, as whether or not he should be 17 or 32 or more of a second round guy. I think he's going to be off the board by the middle of the second round. So if the Steelers wanted him and had to have him, it would obviously probably have to be at 17 or 32 overall. But I'm curious to go back and kind of compare the 2020 tape from him to the more recent tape.
One quick aside before we keep answering questions, I wanted to wait a couple minutes before people got into the chat. We'll be live on Sunday, this coming Sunday. I believe that's the 26th, and it'll be the annual Walk the Mock live stream. So I'll be the GM of the Pittsburgh Steelers 3-round mock draft, and so that will start at 8 p.m. Eastern Time this Sunday. Come join me and help me draft for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so I'll be putting out some alerts for that over the next couple of days to remind you guys. But Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Walk the Mock live mock draft.
You get a pretty good turnout for that too, don't you?
Yeah, it's usually one of our higher turnouts for a live stream. So people get excited and they get mad at me, and there's a lot of emotions. And with 3 picks this year for the top 2 rounds, it's going to be a lot of fun. All right, back to the questions here. Mike Adesso, 2 players I think need to be strongly discussed at 17 more, but aren't because they aren't trench guys, are Brian Branch out of Alabama and wide receiver Jackson Smith-Njigba from Ohio State. Big fan of those 2. Branch is the safety, kind of versatile chess piece in that Crimson Tide defense. I could see Branch at 17. I think Smith-Njigba at 17, and I don't want to be that guy that's saying things are too high or too low, but that does feel a bit too high for me. I think 32 would be a really good spot for him, and I may do a video on him. I've been kind of kicking the idea around. I think that's a really good slot receiver option for Pittsburgh on day 2. And Branch at 17, I think that's a good suggestion by you, Mike.
Well, you go back to Jackson's tape from, 2 seasons ago, right? Man, very, very impressive. And I think there's going to be quite a nice handful of 3, 4, 5 receivers that the Steelers might consider in the second or third round. And I think he could be one of those guys to watch in that area. It does feel, from what I've seen on him, 17 overall be a little strong for him. But hey, look, the Steelers have proven in the past, if they like a guy, they don't give a damn where people think they should take him. But 17 does feel a little strong for him. I haven't gotten into Brian Branch's tape much of any to really have a formed opinion on him just yet.
Let's see. Mark Miller was asking a question, but just says with a deep corner class available, and then it cuts off. So I don't know if Mark, if you. Okay, I see the rest of it in a separate comment. Should the Steelers wait to draft a cornerback with a third or fourth pick and use 17 and 32 on O line, D line? It's hard to say. I don't like to put myself in those corners and have that black and white painting of do this, do that, address this position, then that position. I think corner is strong. The value at 17 might be too tempting that you want to take a guy there, because as much as you talk about, the needs of the team, what positions do you have to address to get stronger at, you can't ignore the value of what the first round offers. You want to get good players, obviously, especially at the top of your class. And so the just knowing all the names there of Gonzalez and Witherspoon and Cam Smith and Ringo Porter Jr. is the weight of the talent at that position going to outweigh maybe a weaker defensive line class or offensive line options?
Right.
That's the consideration there.
Yeah, positional value, and just this early on, from what I've seen, and the more that kind of comes out, you read along and follow along with some of the specific stats related to a couple of these guys like Gonzalez and Witherspoon. It feels like neither one of those two guys, Gonzalez or Witherspoon, would even be on the board at 17. Now, you don't want to speak in definitives this early on because things obviously can change. But from where I sit right now in the process, it feels like both those guys might be there. And I would speculate this early on that it might end up being a second or a third round area where they might address the position.
Right. Ross Swisher, unrelated football question. Would you guys pay Daniel Jones $45 million a year if you're the Giants and Dable? I think these guys are getting way overpaid nowadays as mediocre quarterbacks. No, I wouldn't pay Daniel Jones that amount of money. I think you can franchise tag the guy for considerably less, can't you, Dave?
Right. I would, unless I had an alternative plan, and if assuming I could have the cap space to dedicate it to it, I think I'd probably tag him and make him prove it to me one more year. Put him in that Joe Flacco situation or whatnot, and see which. Look, he definitely showed a lot this year, but is it enough of a sample size to say, man, we want to lock him up for that kind of price, and obviously the percentage of guaranteed money that would likely have to come with such a deal.
Right. It just seems like a lot, but the cap goes up, and quarterbacks always demand that biggest chunk of the cap. Again, if you guys could like the stream, would really appreciate that to get more and more people into the stream, especially in these maybe leaner, quieter moments of the offseason. So be sure to hit that like button. Mutated Gino, hello, says, hello, Alex and Dave. What will be the likely asking price for Tremaine Edmonds? And do you see the Steelers having a realistic chance of signing him? Do you see the Bills letting him get away? What are your thoughts on Tremaine Edmonds, Dave?
Yeah, there's a good article, I think even this morning from, I think it's the Buffalo News, kind of talking about prospects of different guys that they might decide to franchise. And look, you go back to the press conference that who is it? Brandon Bean over there gave not too long after the season ended, and he admitted, look, they are up against it cap wise. They've got a lot of important decisions to make this offseason, and they're going to have to franchise tag a guy at Edmonds, which I think the number's somewhere around what, 20 million, right? That's mighty rich, there. So I think that what you'll see Buffalo try to do is maybe try to work out a long-term deal with him before the tag deadline, and whether or not they're successful, is another question that I don't have the answer to there. It kind of feels like that's a strong tag number, and look, it's so high because a lot of the edge guys are mixed in there that have that tag for linebacker. They don't differentiate between the outside linebackers like of T.J. Watt and some of these. They don't differentiate between the positions, so they get lumped into to one group there, and that kind of makes it feel like Edmonds at the tag price is way too expensive. So what is his probably approximate value, I don't know. Looking at the linebacker list on Over the Cap, and you obviously got Roquan Smith leading it at 20 million, Fred Warner at 19 million. That feels high to me. I think somewhere probably more in the line of, I don't know, 13 and a half to, I don't know, 15 million seems more tolerable, if you will. Now, look, the off the ball free agent class, I don't think is going to be all that this offseason anyway. There, so it would make him and guys like Long. Kind of the premier guys to go after. So if he did hit free agency, long story short, I mean, if you're talking about a guy at 13.5 million, when it comes to the Steelers, 15 million, it feels like that's just going to be too rich for them to be. And here's the thing: he's got age on his side,
right?
And he is a Fizzaman, one of those Fizzaman specimens. But where was some of the playmaking at by him this past season?
Yeah, I think at times, and I haven't followed as closely as Bills fans, I think his career in some respects was underwhelming. Although against Miami in the wildcard game, right? He had a great game, I think it was. Now, that was
right.
a Dolphins team that was starting Skylar Thompson, so maybe things get a bit easier than had they faced Tua, but that was a big game I remember from him. But, at some points in his career, it's maybe been a little bit quieter overall. I know it's going to be a pretty sexy name to connect to Pittsburgh, but I'm going to guess and say that Edmonds will not become a Pittsburgh Steeler in 2023.
Yeah, that would be my guess. Now, look, it drops off pretty quick there. You have, as I mentioned, Roquan Smith at 20 million, and then, man, you get about 10 deep into this thing, you're down around 10 million, 10.3 or whatnot. And Matt Milano is in there at 10.375. You got Bobby Wagner with the Rams at 33 years old at 10 million. Eric Kendricks at 10 million, who's 31. Devondre Campbell with the Packers at 10 million. And heck, if you don't go too far down the list, and you find Miles Jack there, I think within the top 20 at 8 million or so. So obviously, if you did go that route with Edmonds, it would probably cost Miles Jack his job. It might, Miles Jack might be out of the job in a couple weeks anyway.
Right.
But it feels like it would, if you did go the route after Tremaine Edmonds, it would come at the expense of Miles Jack there. From where I sit right now, I would bet against it happening. But for obvious reasons, it's easy to connect the dots, right?
Sure.
The bloodline, the Edmonds, youth still on his side. They were obviously at that pro day to see both of those Edmonds kids years ago on top of it. But from where I sit right now, what I think the market value might end up being for him, it feels like it's something that Steelers wouldn't do.
I'm with you there. If you guys could just do me one favor, don't donate a super chat right now. If somebody could just check, is super chat still an option? I just want to make sure YouTube didn't turn something off on my end, and I'm not aware of that. YouTube likes to change things around, so can somebody just check and see if it even just allows the option to donate a super chat? You don't have to do it, actually, send the money, but I just want to make sure it's toggled on. So if somebody could do that and let me know in the comments, just for my own peace of mind, because I get kind of anxious about this stuff sometimes. So would appreciate that.
It looks like it's allowing me to do it, Alex.
Okay,
how much do you want? Is this are you trying to ask for more money from me?
Yeah. I mean, if you're offering, if I'm offering and you're offering, all right. I just want to make sure that was still on, just because YouTube likes to mess with things sometimes. Anyway, let's get back to the questions here. Next one, actually, is more of a comment, kind of a question-comment from Ross Wisher. Aaron Curry, wasn't he a Seahawks player? He was. The number 4, number 5 pick of the 2009 draft, once considered the safest player in that draft to was anything but, did not have a good career in Seattle or in the NFL, but now not made official, but appears to be coming to Pittsburgh as a team's outside linebackers coach. Dave, what's your just overall reaction to, we assume, the Aaron Curry hire?
Yeah, first and foremost, it's a bit of out of nowhere name. You probably could have asked me to guess 5 names that they might consider for that. I'm not sure I would have picked Aaron Curry as being one of them. But with that said, he is an up and comer. It seems like when it comes to defensive coaches, he's going to be what did I say, 37 in April or May or something like that. You look at back, and I haven't. There is a video out there that shows all the Seahawks sacks from last season. I think you can find that on their on the Seahawks YouTube channel. I've been that was something I thought I might be able to get to today, and I wasn't able to do it. But they had a couple of young guys, a Wasu out of USC that had 9.5, and the kid Taylor out of Tennessee a couple
Mm-hmm.
years ago. I think he had 9.5 over there. So somebody did something right last year to have the production of those two guys go up there. And obviously Curry, it sounds like was an assistant, mainly working with the edge rushers over there. So at least from a 30,000-foot view, since the news broke late yesterday afternoon, I can't find anything wrong with it. Heck, I mean, that's a great kind of job, right? To have to coach TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, and obviously his job will go a lot further than that.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, there are going to be a couple of young outside linebackers that he's going to have to coach coming up here soon. But just from a quick overview, quick thought on it, I don't see anything wrong with the move.
Yeah, I'm excited about the hire. I was reading up on Curry a bit more this morning, and just the backstory is interesting. Grew up, he said, dirt poor in North Carolina, became a first-round pick of Seattle, and then obviously had a pretty tough NFL career. Dealt with injuries, dealt with the struggles of playing away from home, other side of the country. So just a guy that I think can relate to a lot of people because he's been at the lowest of lows, the highest of highs, and everything in between. And the dude's 37, can be relatable to the young guys to come in, and has that experience from all walks of life. A little DHB like, where DHB could kind of relate to everybody in that room because he was a first round pick. He was guy didn't work out with the Raiders and reinvented himself. So just probably a guy that can connect with whoever else gets added to that room. So I'm excited about that.
Alex needs gas money. That Porsche is expensive to fill up of yours, isn't it?
Yeah, gas out here in Western PA, pretty expensive.
I just came from San Diego. It's damn near almost $6 a gallon out there.
Yeah, well, Brandon Hadger's helping out the gas fund, and it's all jokes there. But thank you so much for the $5 super chat. Brandon has a question about J.J. Watt. Let me scroll up and find it. He says, I just saw it a moment ago. Should I spend any time fantasizing about J.J. Watt being hired by the Steelers to help TJ? I think J.J. is going to spend some quality time with the family and probably do whatever J.J. Watt wants to do. I don't know how much hope TJ will need right now, but maybe in his retirement, J.J. can maybe talk to TJ a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think J.J. said he plans on trying to maybe even make some games, right?
Oh, did he? I know he said he's going to become a bigger Steeler fan. So.
Right. I would be surprised for him to show up a couple of games in Pittsburgh, especially if they end up re-signing Derek Watt, which isn't a given at this point here. But no, I think he probably wants to spend time with his wife and that new baby more than anything.
For sure. John Pennington, hello John, how you doing? Says hello Dave and Alex. What would it take to get into that 5th and 6th round? And a super chat just came in that moved the chat for me, but. John says, what would it take to get into that 5th and 6th round without giving up the farm? I mean, to get a 5th round pick for Loudermilk, that was a 4th rounder, a future 4th. Generally, that next year's picks are kind of worth one up, I guess is how to explain that. So probably a 2024 4th, or I think more likely you trade down in the with one of those day 2 picks or some other trade where you pick up a 5th or 6th rounder that way. So you can always go either direction, trade down to get a pick or trade up to get a pick. Super chat coming in from Captain Spartan04. Finally get to tell you all about Shaka Hayward, linebacker out of Duke. 80-plus tackles, 3 of 4 seasons, 4 INTs, 11.5 sacks, 11 pass deflections. Cousin of Cam and Connor. I know there has been debate about the bloodlines between him and Cam and Connor. I think the consensus is that they're technically related, but they've never actually met, Cam and Connor, and I guess it's Shaka Hayward. So I that bloodline aside, I mean, interesting guy. Maybe a guy we'll profile before draft season officially wraps up.
Yeah, I think who was it? Dr. Mel was talking about that. She really can't. That she did she DM Charlotte or something like that.
I think so. Yeah. So they might be actually related, but there's not really a relationship there apparently.
Before it gets too far past me here, Samantha asked, "How's my back doing?" Samantha, it's night and day different. Thanks for asking. I turned the corner about 3.5, 4 weeks ago. I had bad bulging disc in my back that got worse and affected the sciatic nerve going all the way down the leg. I was beginning to wonder, and I had been dealing with this since like August. So all of the entire season, I was dealing with my back, and I dropped a little bit of weight that helped along with it, and after it got worse, it ended up getting better, and I just was able to even go to San Diego the end of last week there. So keep your fingers crossed. So far, so good.
Yeah, that is the best news of the live stream for sure. So thank you for asking, Samantha, and glad you're feeling better, Dave. Another super chat. Thank you so much, Jesse Hernandez. Certainly, you guys didn't have to. I was just checking because I know we hadn't got one in a bit, which is totally fine. And YouTube just sometimes they change things, so you didn't have to donate, but we really appreciate that, Jesse. First ever from him, who says, "Hey guys, if you both had your first choice at cornerback with number 17 pick, who would it be, regardless of if they are there or not?" So basically, if you could wave a magic wand and put a corner to Pittsburgh at 17, yeah, I don't have a great answer. I think I'm kind of debating, and don't hold me to this, but Devon Witherspoon from Illinois, that physicality, or Christian Gonzalez from Oregon, just for the size and I think some of the pedigree type stuff. So leaning one of those two guys right now, but again, it's a really strong cornerback class, and there's going to be options there for Pittsburgh.
Right, and I haven't gone, and I know we have profiles of both on the site, but outside of that, and just spot game here and there from the all 22 access that we have, those would be my two as we sit here in late February.
Yeah, but it's a really strong class. You got Cam Smith from South Carolina. Of course, Joey Porter Jr. is going to get a lot of headlines and has already been mocked a million times given the connection to Pittsburgh. Even Emmanuel Forbes from, I believe, Mississippi State is a big, long corner, kind of that Martin Emerson vibe, who's doing a good job in Cleveland right now. And so there's a ton of options for Pittsburgh. And those corners are going to fall a bit because the quarterbacks are going to dominate the top 10. And you got some other studs like Will Anderson and Jalen Carter that's going to go top 10 as well. And so, some of those corners will fall. All right, scrolling back up here to the questions. Lance Bullock says, "Alex, do you think it may take some time for any rookie O-lineman to adjust to the Steelers' O-line techniques? It seems to take some time for even the vets last preseason." I'm sure. That's probably common for anybody. It just was more noticeable last year because of the pretty big change there, pretty big adjustment. It depends on, where the college system in which they played. I think at Andrew Voorhees kind of played in that more physical, aggressive pass set system. So that might be a more seamless transition for him. It might depend on if you're a senior that started a bunch of games or underclassmen. I do think one thing that will help is the established room can better help the new guys next year, because James Daniels has already gone through the growing pains of how to pass set and learn the system. He can now teach the system as opposed to everybody learning it themselves basically at the same time. So Kevin Dotson and Mason Cole and Dan Moore and Jakuma Corfor can all teach that because they've gone through it, and now they can be teachers as opposed to the guys learning. So that may accelerate that curve a little bit. But yeah, I'm sure there's going to be an adjustment there.
And then look, are any of these guys going to have to maybe switch positions from maybe coming out of an unnatural position? What happens if it's Peter Skronsky and you decide that you want to kick him inside to guard? How will that impact his kind of transition time, if you will? The kid Mock, of all the guys that I think that'll have the easier transition, that Mock kid's his. I know it's North Dakota State tape and the quality, but I mean he really put on a show based on the all 22 from the Senior Bowl stuff. I think his transition should come pretty easy, and since you and I talked since Senior Bowl too, the John Michael
Schmitz,
Schmitz, he's another one that although he predominantly played center, I don't know. You look at the way he kind of moves and all like that. He might have a pretty easy transition if he has to go from center to guard as well too. Where I'd be more concerned is if you having to tackle the pure tackles that might have to make the transition inside.
Yeah, in Pittsburgh, they don't really have a history of doing that, and at least anything recent. Not saying they can't, new regime, but you just want to look at some of those case studies. They tried Calvin Beachum at guard, and that didn't really work. Actually, was better at left tackle, much better at left tackle. Ron Foster kind of did a bunch of everything, but he wasn't, first-round kind of guy. He was a guy that knew he was going to have to kind of get noticed with his versatility. So it's a good question overall, but we'll see what Pittsburgh does on draft day. From a fellow Alex says, hey guys, I saw a tweet a little while ago that Howie Roseman has never drafted a cornerback in the first round. Do you think that is a philosophy Weidl will bring to the Steelers? I doubt it. I don't know the whole history there and the validity of that. Let's assume that it's true. Andy Weidl was never the decision maker in Philadelphia. It was Roseman, as you point out, Alex. And only since 2019 did Weidl basically set the draft board and kind of run the draft up until draft day when Roseman made those final calls. And so I don't see any evidence that Weidl is anti-cornerback.
Yeah, do you think people are maybe paying too much mind to Weidl's addition?
It's just so tough to tell because when this team makes their picks, unless there's something super obvious or said post-pick, how will you know who kind of drove the bus for that selection? Right. That's going to be the difficulty.
Right, because you know Mike Tomlin's going to have a pretty good say in this.
Sure, and it's reasonable.
As is Khan, obviously.
Yeah, it's reasonable to assume Tomlin's influence is going to grow, considering he's the remaining guy.
Right.
But it just, I mean, it has to have some influence. No, they bring this guy in to do nothing. I mean, to ignore his philosophy and ideas.
Well, I mean, to set a draft board. I mean, how much collaboration, or do you just trust him to be the liaison to set the draft board, and then you go off of the draft board? You know, I mean, that's why you have a draft board, right? I
mean, in theory, sure. So it'd be influence from Weidl if they follow that draft board. There'll be a collaboration to make the board.
But how much say in the collaboration of the draft board will he have? We'll never know the answer to that question.
But if he's in charge of making the board, I would assume that he would have say. I mean, I don't know, but that would be logical.
Okay.
So it's a good question, and again, it's hard, especially now that there are like 4 decision makers in this process of Tomlin, Khan, Weidl, and Rooney. Who's driving what bus? I mean, if Rooney wants something, he gets it, but you never quite know. I think Rooney has a big influence on the first round direction, putting a stamp on Najee Harris on quarterback play. Go back to Dan Rooney basically getting this team to take Ben in 2004. So I think first round is kind of driven by what Rooney, maybe what Tomlin wants. From there on out, it might be more of the other guys.
Right.
Let's see. Next question comes from Mike Adesso. Alex, you like to say the Steelers need that surefire cornerback 1 athlete that can cover while this draft is deep with cornerbacks. Doesn't it seem maybe only 3 or 4 are that guy? Getting one later seems pointless. Yeah, you wouldn't necessarily be banking on or finding that number 1 corner in the second or third round, but you can get depth as well. Depth is still a concern. You know, if Witherspoon gets cut, you got Sutton if he's re-signed, which is not a given right now. Wallace, James Pierre is a restricted free agent who's kind of been up and down throughout his career, so there would still be value in getting a cornerback beyond day 2, even knowing you can't count on that guy to be the guy for your cornerback room.
Who's the most notable, let's say, in the last, 5 drafts of a cornerback that was drafted outside the first 2 rounds? Can you think of somebody off the top of your head?
Tariq Woolen last year was a 5th-round pick that became
right. That's a good one.
All Pro Bowler there. Beyond that, I'm sure the chat can probably throw out more names than I can right now.
I don't have the list in front of me right now to run through, but
yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, what are some day 3 type?
You can say that pretty much in any position, really. But I was just curious off the top of your head.
Now, can Pittsburgh find that guy? The running joke is no, they probably can't. But it is a new front office, so I think that is something to note there. It's even in terms of scouts and that kind of aspect, there's been significant turnover. So the old regime that couldn't draft a corner to save their life, it's a lot of different people in there now. The chat saying any day 3 corners: Alontae Taylor, Xavier Howard, remember him from Baylor. That's a good one there. Taylor had a good year with New Orleans, so yeah, a couple good names there. All right, let me go through some of these questions here as I scroll through Jonathan Heitritter's new mock draft. Someone had a question about Jack Campbell, and I'm seeing that in Jonathan's mock right now. I can't find the question in the chat. Yeah, I think Campbell kind of has that Steelers feel. Big guy, smart. Obviously, dude wears black and gold right now, so that's something to consider if this team does not make any, big ads in free agency. Let's see. What else do we have here if I can Find the next question.
Someone asked about Bud and special teams. You seeing that one there from Modesto? Because you just look, Bud hasn't played. I at his age and all that. I mean, I would be surprised if and then think about quality of play. I'm not saying that you can't put him out there, but is he somebody that you would even want out there on special teams?
No, I wouldn't. Bud should not play on special teams if he were to come back. But the good thing is, the number 3 outside linebacker in Pittsburgh, they don't have to play on special teams. James Harrison didn't do it his last couple of years. Melvin Ingram didn't do it. It's not a requirement.
Your number 4 damn sure better be able.
And that's where you get your Jameer Jones and Tuskas. 4 has to do it. Your inside linebackers have to do it. The number 3, I don't think has to do it anymore in Pittsburgh.
You'd like them to be able to do it if they can. It's an added bonus,
Sure,
but
not a deal breaker.
Right, but that's what I'm talking about. Chase Winovich, that, and even him, he's not going to be a core guy, I wouldn't think, but he would be a guy that probably play on at least 2 units,
Jarrell Harris, Alex, do you really think the Steelers should be looking at receivers when our trenches are weaker? You can look at both. It depends on the board. I'm not beholden to one position. You're looking at the mix between, what do I always say, where talent and need intersected at the highest point, wherever that point is. It's a moving target in terms of what's the best value, what helps us win now, how does that all come together. It's not pure BPA. It's not pure what position do we have to take. It's a combination of both, and that's how you decide who to draft.
And look, Kevin Colbert would get on you for not using the word want. Players we want, but on top of that, they really need to have a good draft with these top 4 picks that they have this year, assuming they hold on to them. I would hope that they'd have kind of at least a good general consensus view of how some of these, all 4 of their first 4 picks could have paths to considerable playing time,
Yeah. What are your
perfect world, obviously, but man, they really thinking how I think that they're going to be in free agency this year, probably kind of a muted free agency period for them, especially maybe compared to a year ago there. It really would be great for them to be able to hit on 3 of these first 4 picks this year, especially when it comes to getting long-term starting ability out of them.
Just a real quick sidebar, having this conversation on Twitter before the live stream began, how good of a drafter evaluator was Kevin Colbert? Because some people think he was kind of crappy, especially the back half of his career. How would you evaluate Colbert as a drafter overall?
I mean, overall, fine. More than fine. I think the recency bias creeps in there, though.
Yeah, I think the first round picks got pretty volatile towards the end of his career when you had some really good picks in TJ Watt and some not so good picks in guys like Devin Bush. And so it kind of went up and down later. But I mean, the first 10 years, he was as good as it got. And I think even the latter years were better than people think.
Look, I mean, you can easily point to the 2019 trade up for Devin Bush, but then you turn it and I guess it depends on who you ask. With Deontay Johnson, I mean, Deontay Johnson's a damn good route runner, and you can win with Deontay Johnson as your starting X. Now, if I remember correctly, you weren't too keen on Justin Lane. As early as he was even picked way back when. Benny Snell, could there have been better use of where with a 4th round pick with Benny Snell in that year? The rest of that draft, Isaiah Buggs went on to do a couple good things with Detroit, but the rest of that class outside of and look, Benny Snell's giving you good special teams play, but really not much more than that. That 2019 class as a whole. Not looking great. I mean, you go back the year prior to that. I mean, Edmonds was probably more of a 3rd round player that you drafted in the 1st round. James Washington flamed out fairly quick. Mason Rudolph really hasn't done much of anything in the limited opportunity. You got a starter in Chikwama Okorafor. Marcus Allen's just merely been a special teams player. Tight end Jalen Samuels. I always like to have fun with that
Yeah.
because there's a couple of readers or listeners that say still think he's a tight end. He wasn't. But yeah, there's been some real muted classes, so to speak. But then you go back to 2017, you got Watt,
Yep.
and Juju, and Cameron Sutton, and Connor. I mean, those top four selections that year ended up giving you production overall, top to bottom, obviously. There, so I there's a recency bias in there that people will look and say it hasn't been great lately. But I mean, obviously the jury's still out on 2022, and man, if you hit with Kenny Pickett and George Pickens, it doesn't matter what the rest of the class is there, right? And I mean, you go back to 2021. I mean, Najee. It's not like Najee's been a bust. You know, you know me and my feelings about first round running backs, but it isn't like Najee's totally crapped the bed on you or anything. And same goes with Freiermuth. Now the number, you know, I had questions about the Kendrick Green pick the minute it was made, but I think when people look at it, there's the more what has happened lately.
Sure,
but top to bottom, going back to 2000 with Colbert. You look at the overall picture, I think it's been fine.
I think it's been really good. I think he was one of the best consistently. And for people that say he wasn't good the back half of his career, his worst class to me by far was 2008. I mean, that was just a disaster. Mendenhall, Swede, Bruce Davis. I mean, and it got even worse from there. So just one footnote there. Back to the chat, back to the questions. Infinity 2Z3R0 says, greetings, Dave and Alex. How do you think the new regime views the roster? Enough holes to entertain trading down, or are we locked in at 17, Dave? Is this team locked in at 17?
What did we talk about this morning? The proper response to anything trade related in a draft is maybe.
Maybe.
I mean, look, we'll see. I mean, it's impossible to entertain kind of that speculatory middle of the first round trade down questions, really. I mean, I have no clue what they're thinking and what they might do. Is there maybe some guy that they're really totally in love with that they're willing to go up to make sure they get? Or in the same breath, are they willing to circle 3 or 4 guys that says, look, if we can move down and 3 or 4, as many as 3 spots, 4 spots, are we comfortable with that group of players that would leave us with any one of those players? My hope is that there would be more open to a set of players instead of just one player. But you don't know how in love they are with a certain player at a certain spot that would prevent them from moving out. No matter how maybe sweet the deal is. So anytime we're asked about I've learned over the years that maybe they will, maybe they won't. It just it all depends on what they're being offered, who they're moving up to get, who they'd be willing to take if they did move down 3 or 4 spots, that kind of thing.
Yeah, they don't even know what they're going to do right now. They don't know if they're going to stay or go up or go down. And usually you don't really know until around draft day, until basically you're on the clock and you're fielding calls and you're seeing how the board falls and all that kind of stuff. So they'll be open to trading down more than Kevin Colbert was. He was ultra conservative in trading down, almost never did it 3 times his entire tenure in Pittsburgh. But you just never know. So maybe. Got a $2 super chat I almost missed from Dead Planet, who saw, I think, Drew Sanders in one of the articles I was scrolling through, who says, Drew Sanders' tape is very alluring. Guy is fast. Yeah, really interesting off-ball linebacker, but also edge rusher, pass rusher from Arkansas, and going to be one of the top linebackers to go in this year's draft. A name to watch there.
Tom Meade, he's one of the first guys that Tom Meade profiled, I think, right out of the chute, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think Meade's a big fan of Drew Sanders. Let's see, 15 minutes left. Be sure to like the stream. A reminder, the Walk the Mock draft will be on the channel this Sunday, February 26th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Got a question from, I just lost it here. Jordan Davis, is Pierre a better player than Witherspoon? We need 3 starting level corners. Is Pierre better than Witherspoon? They're both kind of those up and down guys. Witherspoon, I think at his... Man, that's a tough question because they're kind of similar, height, weight, physically gifted.
Pierre's more physical.
Yeah, Pierre's a better tackler for sure. Witherspoon has gotten better, but they both look like an NFL corner.
Neither
Witherspoon,
one should be starting for the Steelers in 2023, if that's the question.
right? But when they're at their best, like they're both really good corners when they're at their best. But how often do you get their best is kind of the issue.
Right.
So I don't know who I would choose. I mean,
Man, I'd be more apt to choose maybe Pierre, knowing that I'm going to get that special teams play out of him on top of everything else.
yeah, and a good tackler, run defender, physical. Witherspoon not in that same camp, so I don't know. I mean, Witherspoon has done it more on Sundays. Pierre has not been maybe as tested over his career, so that's a tough one. But I do want to, tender Pierre, bring him back, and Witherspoon. We'll see if they keep him or not. Good question though. Does Sutton come back? We need him. From Rodolfo. Yeah, I think Sutton comes back. I want to see the money. It's a big issue and big thought for me, but I think he comes back.
Yeah, I think he comes back. Just how much is too much is the biggest question with him. And they'll have all that figured out after the combine's done, after everybody does their legal tampering, and all sides involved will have a pretty good idea what the market will be on him. And then it just becomes, is that number along with the guaranteed money that he's probably going to expect within what your game plan is or not.
Run by you. I have not watched any David Long. Is he viable? Yeah, he's viable. I haven't studied him super closely, but he'll be one of those free agents or pending free agents, so a name that'll get talked about probably quite a bit.
Yeah, probably not the price tag as a Tremaine Edmonds, and I I think you could do worse as a consolation prize. If that ended up being a way that they do address, if that's their key quote unquote outside free agent off season, signing this off season.
Yeah, they want to go sign another free agent and hope that guy works. They kind of been down this road a ton, and I just kind of feel like go through the draft, just to scout a guy.
Right.
But we'll see. Brian Jonker, which available coach would you be excited to see hired as a passing coordinator? His name is Matt Canada. That is the passing coordinator in Pittsburgh, so nobody. I mentioned Byron Leftwich as the most logical name as some sort of senior offensive assistant head coach to replace the John Mitchell title. I don't think I'd be excited about that necessarily, but that's the only name I've kind of really kicked around. Pep Hamilton, you mentioned. I think that's fairly logical, but I don't spend much time thinking about it.
Yeah, look, at this point now, everybody should know that whether you like it or not, Matt Canada is going to be the offensive coordinator for this team, at least out of the chute here. So it doesn't do any good, I don't think, at this point in time to waste the breath on continuing to voice your displeasure with the decision on Canada until the season starts, and then right. You can pick, hopefully you won't have to, but if you need to, you can pick it up right where you left off at that point. Now, the decision's been made at this point. It just, to me, it's useless to talk about that part of the decision-making process right now.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you there. Another $2 super chat from Dead Planet. P.S. No idea how Max Duggan is not in the top 3 quarterback convo. I think I got to disagree there. I think Duggan had a good Senior Bowl week, at least to practice, but you got a stacked quarterback class with Young and Stroud and Richardson and Will Levis. Duggan is not going to crack that group.
He's going to get drafted, though. He should.
Late. Probably late day 3.
Right.
Yeah. But not top 3 quarterback material.
Right.
All right, got about 13 minutes left. Let me try to go through as many questions as I can. Let's see. Carl says, in his opinion, Steelers should sign Casey over Edmonds since Casey is a better cover safety and can play in place of Minka if there's an injury. That said, what are your thoughts on Brian Branch? I know we just had the report on him. I think we had a report on him a couple days ago from, I believe, Josh Carney about his versatility, athleticism, get that Alabama safety group with him and Minka back there. So, yeah, a name to kick around for 17.
Man, if it saved me, we'll see what happens with KZ and Edmonds, obviously. But my preference would, they got so many holes on this team. If they could re-sign both KZ and Edmonds, I'd be fine with bypassing that strong safety. Or, get one later in the draft, or get a couple of undrafted kids in there to compete. But I'm kind of silently hoping that they don't have to spend an early-ish, one of their top, let's say, 4 picks in this year's draft on a strong safety.
KYR, what do you want to see from Khan and Weidl this draft? I want to see aggressiveness in addressing the trenches. Yeah, I think D-line, at the least in its current form, looks really shaky. It's Cam Hayward, and not sure what else is going to be there next year. Ogunjobi, Wormley, free agents, Wormley with the ACL, Alu. If he hasn't already retired and just hasn't told anybody, he's going to retire. And then Loudermilk and Adams, are they starting caliber? Loudermilk is not. Adams is kind of iffy. So to me, in some form or fashion, for agency or draft or both, you got to address that D-line.
I forgot to look this up before I went out of town here, and I just jogged my memory to look now. The Chiefs did indeed re-sign Chris Oladokun to a futures contract. Did you know that?
Yeah, I did see that come in. So he's got a Super Bowl ring. I guess it was a good year for him. It all kind of worked out in the end, I suppose, right?
Yeah, he's got a ring.
What jogged your memory about the safety conversation about Oladokun?
Because the question before about quarterback and all like that. I'm sure some people are going to wonder, might they spend another late round draft pick on a quarterback? And because I know how much it irritates you to bring up the name Chris Oladokun, I forgot to look whether or not he signed a futures deal before I went out of town. I just went to the database, and they did indeed re-sign him.
Yeah, if they're at one of these pro days for some day 3 quarterback, I'm going to have to take a walk or something because I don't want to go through that again. We'll see. Bruce Myers, Dave, and Alex, which line do you think has a better chance of the Steelers double dipping in the draft, O-line or D-line? Again,
D-line,
you think?
I think.
Probably, but it's just, when you double dip,
close.
When you double dip, like to me, it's a day 3. It's a talent, a value thing. The board just breaks the right way. I don't know if it's always intentional. It depends on what happens in free agency and all those kinds of things. So yeah, I think I would sign D-line. To me, my ideal, as we sit here today, a way to address the offensive line, if you assume for just a second you run back the starting 5 next year, I'm not saying that you have to do that, but let's assume that for a second, to address the depth of the offensive line, sign a veteran tackle and draft an interior swing guy. That's the way I would create much better depth with this offensive line.
And I had an article on this a year ago. Isn't Kelvin Beachum a free agent again?
I believe so, yeah.
I mean, is that something you would entertain?
Pretty old. He's 33,
34.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not necessarily against it. I was thinking, and I think we're kind of in different former Steelers camps. I was thinking Chris Hubbard because he's super versatile, a little bit younger, not great, but cheap.
I mean, from the little bit I remember watching of Beachum, he wasn't awful, and he could play both sides.
Has he been playing both in Arizona and Jacksonville? Has he kind of been moving around?
I have to pull up my notes that I have on him somewhere. I know for a fact he's obviously played on the left side.
Yeah. I don't know how much he was moving around or what he was doing.
Let me see what PFF said he did last year on sides.
But yeah, I mean, I get that. I think
for a 1 year kind of bridge veteran, good for the room. You could do worse than him.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm not. I don't hate that idea. I think Beachum is similar to my Hubbard suggestion. So I think
he'd be mighty cheap for sure.
Yeah, I would. I mean, again, great community guy, tremendous, person, and would bring value and a good veteran for that still pretty young offensive line room.
Let's see, Beachum last year. Most of his snaps, that's right, were right tackle. 11. Almost, 1,158. He did play 16 snaps at left tackle last year for them. And then the year before, 21, he was, 77 at left and 926 on the right. So he's been predominantly right side, but he can, in a pinch, give you some left side snaps.
Yeah, and obviously was left tackle in Pittsburgh for a long time. So it's actually better to hear he's played more right tackle as of late. They're probably going to go sign Cam Irving from Carolina with Pat Meyer, and Irving's played all over, and so that's a guy that makes sense to me.
Give Cameron Hayward someone to beat up on in practice, wouldn't it?
Make Cam feel young again. That's the way to do it. F32, Andre Dillard and Cleve Farrell would be great under the radar type free agents. Yeah, I know Dillard's been mentioned to me a couple times. Andy Weidl, Philadelphia there, former first-round pick.
Farrell's a little bit bigger, though, too, and don't you already have that kind of guy in Leal?
Yeah, it's a little redundant. That's a good point. But do they want to make Leal a full-time defensive lineman? If they do,
We're gonna
then
find out.
that kind of opens up a guy like Farrell. Yeah, Dilliard, if you sign him, is he going to start? I mean, would he be the backup? Would they compete? Does he want to be in that position? A couple of thoughts there. Not sure. But a name that's been talked about a couple times in my timeline.
And the reason I think you could more likely see him double dip on D line is they could use a later round big body plugger in the middle, someone like the PJ Mustipher out of Penn State. Didn't Josh just post a profile on him this afternoon?
He did just before we got on here. He's a big PJ Mustipher fan. Had a good week at the Shrine Bowl.
I mean, you got bloodline there. I think wasn't he a captain at Penn State? His brother plays center for the Bears. I think he's a better run defender than he is pass rusher. I mean, he'd be an ideal later round guy that maybe you could groom to be that, base nose tackle,
Yeah, voted team captain 2 straight years, according to Josh. And so that is the info on PJ Mustipher. About 5 minutes left. We'll see what other questions are here. Who used to set the draft board in Pittsburgh? Good question. I don't know who actually was responsible for that. Who set the draft board before Weidel, presumably? I know Rooney has said that he will. I don't know. It's a good question. Any idea, Dave?
No, I can't. If it was, I can't remember if it was ever disclosed.
I don't think it ever was. You'd have to probably just guess. I don't know if that would be. It doesn't matter. I'm going to get in the weeds about that. But Kreidler or Colbert, Dan Colbert, probably not Dan. He was more area scout. Dan, no, I don't know. I'm getting in the weeds here. It doesn't really matter. Good question though, Mike. I wish I had an answer for you. Any chance you take Cody Mauch at 32? His arm length obviously a red flag, but worst case, he's their upgrade over Dotson. Imagine the 2015 power, but instead coming from the left side. So the Castro of the left side is what Jesse's saying. Yeah, would you consider it? I would. How Pittsburgh evaluates small school guys with this new regime. One thing I'll be watching for very closely this offseason. Let's see what else we have here. Thoughts on linebacker Ivan Pace Jr.? How would he fit in Austin's defense? I think he'd be...
Who?
Ivan Pace Jr., the linebacker from Cincinnati.
Yeah.
I think he would have been a better fit in the Dick LeBeau style with the super aggressive blitzing inside linebackers. Not saying he can't fit in this system, but...
He's a physical guy, though. Boy.
Yeah. Short, but he's like all quads, all muscle, super big chip on his shoulder, intense blitzer type of guy. So... Pittsburgh.
I thought he held his own okay at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, he had a good week down there for sure. And I just worry the size is still going to be an issue, and I think the scheme fit isn't as strong now as it used to be. So maybe a decade ago would have been a stronger fit. Today, a little bit less so. Let's see what else we have here. Any chance Hargrave makes his way back home? I doubt it. You doubt that too, Dave?
Yeah, I do. I think the demand out there, we'll see obviously what the Eagles do with him before he hits free agency. But if he does, you'd have to think that a guy like him is going to be in pretty good demand. And at his age and asking price, it just feels like something they'd much more rather go the route of the draft. Look, I hated them losing him a couple years ago, but I will be surprised if he circles back to the Steelers this offseason.
Same. John asking about what would it take to trade that first pick in the second round. It's really hard to say those things. You're always listening. You're always weighing options, but too hard to say right now, John. Run by you. That 0-2 draft is underrated, not splashy, but a lot of guys who contributed to wins. Yeah, I think 0-2, top to bottom, you could argue, top to bottom, the collective group, that might be his best class ever, just because there were almost no misses in that class from, who was that? Simmons at the top, the Brett Kiesel at the bottom. Yeah, I mean, that was a great class.
I guess LeVar Glover was kind of the dud in there. Lee Mays was more of a kind of a part-timer, right? Ron Haynes definitely played a role.
Mm-hmm.
Larry Foote was not originally a starter, but when he back after, what was it, a year in Washington, right?
Detroit? Where did he go? I forget. He's in Detroit now, or Arizona, but But yeah,
No, where didn't Foot leave
he did.
for a year? I guess it was Detroit. It was
Okay.
Randall L that went Washington.
Okay, so Foot did go to Detroit. Gotcha.
And
But yeah,
then
great pick.
both of them circled back, I think, the year after, didn't they?
Yeah, at least it's. I know both came
In
back.
2010, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was a really strong class. Let's see, $20 super chat from Tony Anderson says, "How come no one talks about Brian Branch with the first 2 picks? The kid's a great player, plays fast. Yeah, I mean, we talked about him some tonight, Tony. So worthwhile name. You know, once the pro day circuit starts and we start seeing where Pittsburgh goes, and we saw Omar Khan today at the HBCU Combine, the only GM to attend, and so a good sign that Khan will be a pretty visible presence on the scouting trail this year. We're gonna hopefully start trying to put together that list of names, and that may include Brian Branch. I imagine Pittsburgh will be at that Alabama Pro Day along with the other rest of the NFL, and so it'll be on the list.
And look, once again, that's not a guy I've gone deep at all into the tape on. But if as advertised, he's a guy that can give you, you don't re-sign a guy like Casey, for instance, and if he's a guy that can give you some snaps in the slot, and kind of play that role I mean, then possibly he could be in consideration there.
Yep, for sure. Mike Adesso, Brandon Hunt on who set the draft board. That might be the answer. I can't tell you for sure, but Hunt is as good a guess as any there, Mike. So good on you there. Rob James, what about flipping a core 4 back to left tackle? I don't know. I mean, you could, but he's gotten pretty comfortable on that right side. If they draft a right tackle type, a Dawan Jones, it'd become a conversation, but not something I'm actively searching to do.
Look, if you're going to draft a tackle early this year, I think you're drafting one to play on the left side, right?
I mean,
correct.
You don't have to, I guess, depending on who the guy is. I mean, you could. Nothing's stopping you from moving a core 4 over.
Right.
And left tackle.
It doesn't feel ideal though, unless you got someone that you knew was going to just be an ass kicker over there at right tackle, and you couldn't move him.
Yeah, but I mean, right tackles, they face so many good pass rushers these days, so it's not like I don't know. I mean, you would think left tackle where the top names are sitting, whether it's Skoronski or Broderick Jones or Paris Johnson, but who knows? Who knows? Could be Darnell Wright or Dawan Jones. So a question here. Why don't Cam Sutton or Minka wear the green dot? They're praised for their smarts and are out there every down. It's just harder to communicate when you're on one side of the field or lined up 15, 20 yards deep, and so you want guys who kind of are in the middle of the action. That's why it's typically the off-ball linebackers.
Right, and Cameron Sutton is probably one of the smartest guys on it. If anybody can handle it, it's him. But generally it's more of your every down inside linebacker that gets that role.
Right. Although I think it's kind of changed hands over time. I mean, I think it kind of was, who even had it past year?
We know T.J. Watt don't want it.
Yeah, he had that in 2019, and that didn't work out well. I mean, I guess it was. Did Jack have it? I guess this year. I'm trying to think who had the green dot in 22.
I think Jack had it for a predominant amount of time.
Okay. Yeah, Mike saying Tony Jefferson Ward. Yeah, I mean, you can do it. Jefferson kind of played all over and was kind of more the box type. So corners, I don't know if any corner in football has a green dot, because if you're on one side of the field, how are you talking to the other guys? So that's going to be an issue. But yeah, I mean, it's a fair point. All right, that's going to wrap up the questions here. Really appreciate the turnout and all the very generous super chats from the entire super chat contributors tonight. So going to have some more videos for you guys. I know it's been a bit quiet on the channel lately. And again, this Sunday, February 26th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Walk the Mock, live stream drafting the first 3 rounds of 2023. So that'll be 4 picks of the Pittsburgh Steelers, 3 in the top 50. There's trades. There's all this fun and games that you guys can be my scouts and help me pick this thing for Pittsburgh. So hopefully we'll see you there this Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Dave, as always, thank you for being here with me.
Thank you for having me. You do a great job putting these on. Thank you for everybody that showed up tonight. Peace and love, and we'll talk to you on this live stream 2 weeks from tonight.
For sure. All right, so you guys can see an archive version of this on Steelers Depot in just a little bit, and we'll have some more content for you over the coming days. Appreciate you guys being here, and we'll talk to you soon. So let me just exit the stream, and we'll get out of here.